For those of you 45 plus, approaching menopause, what does your beauty mean to you?
There's so many things that you can do to support yourself during this transition. I've really been focusing on women's health 45 plus to really get that information out there to women that there are so many things that you can do to, not only look great, but feel great as well.
Today, I'm talking to Alison Bladh, a esthetician and a nutritional therapist who's going to talk about all things related to her approach to your most beautiful self during this critical point in your life. Let's start this episode.
You Are Beautiful, podcast with J. Kim, MD.
Welcome to the You Are Beautiful podcast with J. Kim, MD. I'm your host, Dr. J. Kim, a facial plastic surgeon, and I'm on a mission to make the world a more beautiful place, starting with you. There are 3 undeniable truths that you must embrace to start your beauty journey. The first is that you are beautiful. The second is that you are unique. And the third is that you are worth it. Let's begin. Today, I have a wonderful guest all the way from Sweden. Her name is Alison Bladh. She is an award-winning nutritional therapist and esthetician. She has developed her expertise over more than 30 years enhancing women's health, focusing on those who are going through the perimenopausal, menopausal period and beyond. She is a respected health writer, recipe creator, a published author and speaker, and she blends nutrition, health, and lifestyle strategies to empower women during midlife. Her career exemplifies her commitment to helping women thrive with elegance. I love that term, thriving through elegance through these transformative years. So welcome to our podcast, Alison. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. We have a lot to talk about, and there's so many great things I know that you will have to share with us. Let's start with your journey into this niche, into this role of helping this particular group of people during what can be a transformative and challenging time of life.
Yeah, thank you. My journey actually started as a teenager because I had, when I was a teenager, very bad skin. I had acne. And I mean, it's hard enough, isn't it, being a teenager without suddenly having acne? And that really kind of sent me down this route of looking into hormones, looking into lifestyle, what I was eating, even at that young age. And I just was fascinated by it. And I really managed to, even as a teenager, from changing what I ate, it made a huge difference in my skin. So that led me into my interest in skin and hormones. So then I trained to become a beauty therapist, an esthetician. Yeah. And my clientele was very much hormonal skin problems. And that kind of led me into perimenopause, menopausal women that were having problems with their skin. Yes. Very soon came to realize that, the aesthetic side, of course, is fantastic and needed, but you also need the inside piece. You need the nutrition and the lifestyle and everything to really have that complete overall wellness. So that's when I went back to university and studied nutritional science. Mm-hmm. And really, I think like menopause, I remember like my mother and all her friends when I was growing up, they felt terrible and no one spoke about it, like hot flashes, weight gain, all of those things. But it was kind of just, no, we don't talk about that. It's the change. That was it. It's the change. You just had to get on with it, which, there's so many things that you can do to support yourself during this transition. So ever since then, I've really been focusing on women's health 45 plus to really get that information out there to women that there are so many things that you can do to, not only look great, but feel great as well.
I love your message. I love your approach. And what I see with a lot of my patients who are of this category, of this age group, is that they spend much of their lives giving their energy to others, to their spouses, to their children, to their community. And so they don't have much in the reserve for themselves. And so do you see that in a lot of your clients as well? And how do you guide them through that?
Yeah, totally agree with everything you said. I mean, it's as women, we're carers, aren't we? We look after everybody. You look after your family, you look after everyone there, and it becomes exhausting. And especially, it's kind of when you get up to around 45, you've got a career. You've probably still got children at home, maybe. You've got aging parents, maybe, that need more care. And you're running a household and everything. And it just becomes too much. Majority of women I work with are totally overwhelmed and exhausted. And they can't really see a way out. They can't feel, how can I make time for myself and my self-care? Because especially when you come into perimenopause, when your hormones start becoming unbalanced, that can also make you feel terrible. So it kind of adds on to all this stress and overwhelm. But one thing that I do with my clients is we do what we call a stress audit, is where we sit down and we talk together and say, okay, tell me what you find stressful in your daily life. It could be something as simple as just driving to work, or, not getting on with your boss, or finding that as soon as you come home, you have to cook dinner and you don't have any breathing space. Right. And we work through that and make small little changes. It doesn't have to be anything drastic, that just gives you that breathing space. And it actually makes a huge difference. But you really have to get into that mindset of prioritizing yourself. And it is actually okay to look after yourself. You don't have to feel guilty about spending time on your health and well-being. Because I think we do, don't we? We feel, I should be looking after everyone else. It's okay to look after yourself. And as you age as a woman, you need to even more. You really do.
Absolutely. The thing about the stress audit, and I think that's a great phrase, is to see what area or areas of life are causing you overwhelm. And so in that context, you were saying that even a small change can start that journey into a better you, a more beautiful you in the perimenopausal and menopausal years. In terms of nutrition, what is one small step that you get a lot of your clients to take in terms of achieving that goal?
Yeah, nutrition is a huge subject, isn't it? But what I work very individually with clients, even though I do have group programs, but I work individually with my private clients, and we really look at what are you eating daily. They give me a food diary so we can really see, and what research is showing, particularly for menopausal women, is that because there's so many metabolic changes that happen due to the decline in our hormones, we really have to kind of rethink the way that we eat and what we eat and how much we eat. So making sure that you're eating an adequate amount of protein is key. We as women tend to not eat enough protein, and we need protein. It's the building blocks of the body. We need it for skin health, and we also need it for building muscle, which we lose as we age. We see muscle loss increase as we go into menopause. So increasing protein, and then I'm not talking about like completely reducing and cutting out carbohydrates. I'm not talking about a ketogenic diet, but reducing the amount of what I call like the white foods, like white rice, potatoes, white bread, and filling up on vegetables and like whole grains, instead of all this processed, refined foods, because they just make you feel terrible. And it's shown, if you have a high sugar diet, that you will most likely experience worse menopausal symptoms like hot flashes. So really, protein on your plate, and then lots of, vegetables, salads, all of those things. And then a small amount of carbohydrates, preferably from whole grains. That is a very sustainable, easy way to eat that is great for menopausal women.
I grew up eating white rice. That's just the Korean food culture. That's just how it is with a lot of Asian cultures, I think. And just like in Western cultures, a lot of what we eat is based on white bread. And I do think that decreasing the intake of white bread or other processed carbohydrates does help. Just overall, the heaviness of just when you feel heavy, I experienced that a lot of that gets lifted. So definitely resonate with that. In terms of the skin changes for your clients, what are some of the things that you observe in your clients of the perimenopausal and menopausal group? And then what's your approach to helping them achieve a more beautiful version of themselves?
It's fascinating really what happens with the skin during menopause, and I don't think we necessarily relate estrogen and progesterone and testosterone to our skin health. You know, we have receptors in our skin, and an abundance of estrogen and progesterone receptors in the skin, and when we have a decline in these hormones, we see a lot of changes going on in the skin. I've seen in my clients, a reduction in collagen. We need estrogen for collagen synthesis. So the formation of fine lines and wrinkles, pigmentation, hypo and hyperpigmentation. Estrogen is needed for the regulation of melanocytes in the skin. So you can see all of a sudden you're getting this like imbalance of pigmentation on the skin. Dry skin. That's a really big one. And what you have to remember, you can't blame everything on menopause, can you? You've got the aging process, process going on as well. But it's kind of when you lose your hormones, it makes everything worse. And the dryness on the skin. We need estrogen for the production of hyaluronic acid. We need it for the regulation of sebum on the skin, the oil that your skin produces. It's a very dry, very sensitive skin. I find that a lot of clients all of a sudden react to products and treatments that they never did before, because estrogen has a modulating effect on the immune system. And also if you have a very dry skin, it can become irritated easily. Itchy skin. That's actually quite a big one for people on the body. All of a sudden they get really itchy skin on the legs. You can wake up at night and feel, you really want to scratch your skin. And majority of these is due to the decline in hormones. Acne as well. Perimenopausal acne. All of a sudden when you come into, you're 45 plus, you can find that your skin breaks out in acne. And there's many factors in this, but one of them is that you can become testosterone dominant, and testosterone produces more oil in the skin, and that can be one of the factors in the reason why you develop acne. There's so much going on. The last thing you need is for your face to suddenly break out in acne. So really, working with those sort of skin issues, there's so many fantastic treatments now, aren't there, that you can use on all these problems on the skin. For pigmentation, there's laser treatments. Even if your skin is dry, there's so many fantastic different facials and products on the market that are very hydrating with, hyaluronic acid in. I'm a huge fan of retinol. I love retinol products and retinol treatments. You do obviously have to be a little bit careful with that as an ingredient and not go out in the sun or anything, but it's a brilliant ingredient for working on aging skin and menopausal skin. There's so many different treatments, and I think as well as working on the face, when it comes to menopause, you have to think of the whole person, in a holistic way, because it's quite a stressful time, and you can get depression, you can have like anxiety is a big menopausal symptom. So really doing like massage, aromatherapy, Reiki, all of those body treatments are very beneficial for menopausal women. Managing stress, reducing the cortisol, the stress hormone in the body is crucial. And not like we were talking before, reducing sugar. Sugar's terrible for the skin. So sugar ages the skin. And there's something actually called sugar sag, which sounds horrible, doesn't it? Which is the process of, it's actually called glycation, when sugar and proteins bind together in the bloodstream and break down collagen and elastin. So if you have a high sugar diet, it's not beneficial for skin health. Well, amongst other things, it's not really beneficial for anything, but you'd really see it on the skin.
Yeah. I noticed that people who have poorly controlled blood sugar, their skin is less resilient. I've seen skin that is, you could say, more brittle even, and just very thin. And so that definitely resonates with the idea of sugar being bad for your beauty, particularly your skin. And a lot of what we talked about in terms of hormones, super important as well. What is your view on cholesterol as being a good thing or a bad thing? Because in our younger years, we were told that cholesterol is the devil, and high levels of cholesterol in your blood is bad for your health. But in fact, cholesterol is a very essential part of our composition, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We need it for the integrity of our cells, don't we? Cholesterol is a hugely important, and also for the production of hormones. Yeah, it's a big debate, isn't it? The cholesterol debate, and the research that is coming out now is really showing that what we thought years ago isn't maybe quite correct. That the cholesterol is absolutely terrible and you should avoid it. We need cholesterol, but it's all about the balance, isn't it, in the body, the so-called good cholesterol, the HDL cholesterol, in balance with the LDL. What we find in the Western diet, that we have the balance the ratio is completely knocked out. We have way more LDL than the HDL, which can cause many health issues. But as a nutritional therapist, and based on the science, I'm not, I don't tell clients to avoid cholesterol. I'm very much into, it's all about eating healthy fats in moderation. It's not, there's nothing wrong with fat or cholesterol, but it's the sort of things that you eat, because, fat in general has always been demonized, hasn't it?
Right.
As being terrible. And, I grew up in the era where fat was, nobody ate fat. It was just pure carbohydrates. Whereas now we realize that was actually wrong, and we need healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds. And I mean, it's the same with cholesterol. And I think a lot of people don't realize that your body actually predominantly produces most of the cholesterol. The amount of cholesterol that you get from food is minimal.
Right.
So, cutting out healthy sources of healthy fats, there's better ways to manage cholesterol, and it goes back to sugar, doesn't it, and processed foods and refined products that we eat.
Absolutely. So when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to skin, the aging, even that sugar sag, like you were mentioning, there's also another phenomenon that is relatively recent, but is quite prevalent. And in the US, I'm seeing it more and more. It's the use of GLP-1 agonists. In the US, we call it Ozempic, the generic semaglutide, and all its other relatives. Are there a significant number of your clients who are using this for weight loss? And are there changes in their appearance or their health that you find significant?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't. The clients that I work with, even though quite a high percentage of them are interested in weight management, I don't have any clients that I work with that are actually using these medications at the moment. I mean, I don't know whether it is larger in the US. I mean, of course, it's in Europe. There's loads of information and publicity about it, but I haven't actually come across that in any of the clients that I've been working with at the moment. But it will be interesting to see, won't it, in the future, how that affects our long-term health, because it's such a new drug. We don't really know of the long-term effects of it. And I think it used in the right way, it can be beneficial, but it's like anything, isn't it? It's people are using it maybe that don't necessarily need to, people that just maybe need to lose a couple of kilos. It's being misused, and that's where the concern comes in about the long-term effects of it on our health. But I haven't come in contact with it so much with the clients I work with yet.
I think what we see from Hollywood, and I've seen from a few patients, actually more and more these days, is that there is some atrophy, not just of the skin, but of the superficial fat that's just under the skin. And so it leaves them quite hollow. And when it comes to beauty, a big part of my approach is that if you look atrophied or hollow, you will look older faster. And so along those lines, when you go back to the hormones and how those levels drop over time, that I think is correlated with the atrophy of our skin and soft tissues, which contributes to the more hollow appearance as well. So I am seeing that a little bit more these days. And then the other thing that could be an effect is how GLP-1 agonists increase your body's insulin release. And so it's trying to combat a supposed metabolic syndrome or an insulin resistance, even if your body doesn't have it. So that perturbation, if you will, I'm curious to see how that affects our beauty long term. But kind of like everything else, I do think there is a therapeutic window of any type of treatment or medication or therapy. And then beyond that is a toxic dosage or a regimen, if you will. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out over the next few years.
Yeah, it's really it's interesting. Me too as well. But what you were saying about the hollowness in the skin, that I find very interesting, because also when women go through menopause, we have a redistribution of fat in the body. The fatty tissue under the skin, but due to the hormones and the aging process, that you lose the fat under the skin, and it can give that kind of aging, like gaunt look, on the face and the neck and the décolletage area. Yeah. So yeah, that's really interesting what you said.
So one of the questions I had asked on the guest form leading up to our discussion today was to talk about something that you wish you had known when you were younger about your field of work or health or relationships. And you said the number one thing was SPF. So talk to me about sunscreen, your use of it, your clients' use of it.
Yeah. It's just so aging on the skin, the sun. And I wish somebody told me when I was a teenager. I lived in the States for many years, in Miami, and, I was a huge sun worshipper, just lying there on the beach with like oil. I think that they had Hawaiian Tropic had an oil that was like 0 SPF, because it was in those years it was like really uncool to use sunscreen. It was like you were a real sissy if you put sunscreen on. But it's so damaging to the skin, the sun. And, I think anyone that wants to preserve their skin and for their skin to age well, use SPF daily. Use a day cream with sun protection factor, which the majority of good products these days have sunscreen in. 30 plus really is what we're seeing you need for it to have that protection on the skin. So that's something that I would certainly say, and I tell all my clients, please use a sunscreen on your skin. And we need the sun. I'm not saying you need to block the sun out completely, because we need it for vitamin D synthesis, and also it gives us energy and it has positive effects, but we just want to preserve our skin. So SPF 30 every day of the year, not just in the summer,
Yes.
every day. But do you agree with that? The
absolutely.
Sun? Yeah.
Yes. Even on cloudy days, rainy days, I wear sunscreen myself, and I tell patients to wear it as well. And even somewhere in Sweden where the sun is less intense for most times of the year, it's still a quite essential thing in terms of our skincare, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. To preserve what you've got, really, isn't it? It's looking after your skin so your skin doesn't age as quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yes. A few years ago, I came across an article that said that there were sunscreens that are predominantly chemical ingredients, like octinoxate. I have trouble pronouncing those ingredients, but you presume that the more trouble you have pronouncing these ingredient names, perhaps the more artificial they are. And so there was concern about them being absorbed into our body. There was a lot of hoopla about it. We don't understand the full ramifications of the long-term health effects, but suffice it to say that now I'm encouraging people to use skincare and particularly sunscreen that has mineral ingredients like titanium or zinc. Would you have a particular take on what kind of sunscreen that you like to apply?
Yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it, with sunscreens? And I totally agree, what you were saying about the ingredients. And I tend to recommend to my clients is to work, exactly as you said, have more of a mineral-based product, as less chemicals as possible, and really go for, there are some quite nice, more like organic, that have less chemicals in, that have been shown to still protect your skin from the sun. But yeah, if you read the back of some of these sunscreens, and like you say, you can't pronounce half of the products or ingredients in them, then I wouldn't really want to put that on my skin, because your skin is an organ, isn't it? It absorbs everything that you put on it. So I tend to tell my clients to use more mineral-based, more organic, natural sunscreens if you can get hold of them. But there are more and more coming out on the market. Actually, I think people are becoming very aware of the ingredients in sunscreens. They want them as natural as possible, but obviously still protect you from the sun.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very important part of our skin and our beauty, especially in this critical time frame. Another critical element, I think, of health, and I'm not an expert on it by any means, but personal experience, sleep is a very important part. And so when it comes to sleep and the quality of it, the quantity of it, how is that important for this perimenopausal and menopausal time period?
If you're not sleeping, it just affects everything, doesn't it? It just makes you feel terrible. It has an effect on every aspect of your life if you're not sleeping. And in particular, a lot of women, suffer from night sweats, which obviously wakes them up. And you tend to go to sleep. This is what I see with the majority of my clients. They go to sleep and then they'll wake up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're wide awake. You're just lying there, and it's just terrible because you can't sleep, and you may be suffering from night sweats. And then in the morning you're exhausted. You actually crave carbohydrates when you're tired, so you go into this kind of vicious circle. Estrogen and progesterone are needed for good sleep. So, and the production of melatonin as well is, we need these hormones. So that there are reasons behind them not being able to sleep, and also the night sweats that wake you up. What I tend to do with clients is we work on sleep hygiene, really making sure a couple of hours before they go to bed that they're not doing anything stimulating, like playing on social media or watching television or working on your computer, really trying to like wind down and get away from, these bright lights that keep you awake. It's difficult because we're all so busy, aren't we? But even if you can spend an hour just relaxing before you go to bed, read a book, sit and talk with your family, do something that doesn't involve devices, screens, because it affects our hormones. And if we don't have the melatonin, the sleep hormone, it's very difficult for us to get to sleep. And then things like coffee, caffeine is a stimulant. Think about how much coffee you're drinking, and tea. It's not just coffee. Try to stop having coffee by like midday, if you are a coffee drinker, because the effects of caffeine go on for many hours, and that it does. It's shown in research. It does affect your sleep. It affects the sleep that you go into. You might say, oh, I sleep fine, but you're not going into the deeper sleeps that are so rejuvenating. But the sleep is so crucial for our health and for our skin health as well, isn't it? It's really, really important. And it can be really difficult for women in perimenopause and menopause. And then going, on to that, obviously I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe anything, but, a lot of women have found taking hormone replacement therapy can be beneficial for, sleep, helping with sleep, amongst other things. But that's a very individual choice.
Yes. So when it comes to sleep, and some of the patients that I work with, a lot of them seem to have trouble breathing through their nose when they sleep. And so what I've seen is that if your mouth is open when you sleep, your mouth gets dry, and then you want to drink water in the middle of the night, then that means you go to the bathroom. And so that's another disruptor of your sleep. And then again, it kind of compounds what you were discussing in terms of the sleep quality and still feeling exhausted by morning. So that's one thing that I see, not just with perimenopausal or menopausal patients, but across the board, is that if you have difficulty breathing through your nose, your sleep quality is poor as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? We need to breathe through our nose, don't we? That it's so beneficial for health.
The other interesting thing that you mentioned is that the poor sleep quality leads to a desire for simpler, more processed carbohydrates. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, actually, lack of sleep affects your hunger hormones. So if you've had a bad night's sleep, your hunger hormones can become unbalanced, and ghrelin, which is the hormone that tells us we're hungry, you can produce more of that, and this can lead you down that road to your brain is a very clever thing. And if you're exhausted, it wants quick, refined sugar. It won't lead you. It won't tell you to go and eat like a broccoli salad. It will tell you to go and have a muffin and a pretzel and a bar of chocolate. So, the cravings are really attached to lack of sleep, and sleep quality is crucial for weight management. Really, really crucial in managing weight. You have to work on sleep. The lifestyle piece. I liken it to a jigsaw puzzle, for overall wellness, particularly when you come into perimenopause and menopause. I have what we call my 80-20 rule. So if you do everything right 80% of the time, as in eating, exercising, stress management, all of that, you've got 20% to kind of do what you want, because we've all got a life, haven't we? You have to be realistic. Nobody's perfect. But when you come into perimenopause and menopause, that goes down to 90-10. You have to be a little bit stricter. And, I find it interesting working with clients, and, I can even relate to that myself. When I was younger and I was talking to women that were in menopause, you'd be like, oh no, you'll be fine. You don't need to worry about that. I'll be able to do what I want. But you can't. You really can't. It catches up with you. And, an example is something like wine, like having a glass of wine in the evenings before you came into perimenopause was fine, just the odd glass of wine. But now, if you have a glass of wine, it just affects you terribly. It affects your sleep. You actually wake up in the morning feeling terrible, like having as if you've got a hangover when you've just had one glass of wine. Alcohol, your body can't break down and metabolize alcohol like it could when you were younger. So things kind of catch up with you, and you just have to take better care of yourself. So really the 90-10 rule comes into effect as you come into perimenopause. But you've still got 10% there. There's a lot you can do with 10%.
Yes, you have some room for grace, perhaps a little less room than when you were younger.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But, we're talking about the 90% is still eating delicious, nourishing foods and doing things that are fantastic. It's just being more aware of your body and how you're feeling. I think it's being more mindful, isn't it, of what affects you and what makes you feel good and what makes you feel terrible.
Yeah, and in particular, I think alcohol, in medical school, we used to call it diabetes in a bottle. Just physiologically, what it does to your body is basically like a sugar high and leads to all the other consequences of it for a short while. And so our ability to metabolize it as it diminishes, then there's a prolonged effect of that.
Yeah, it's not worth it. That one glass of wine really isn't worth it, the way that it makes you feel.
So with regard to lifestyle, when we were younger and we were learning about how the brain works, we used to think that it was hard to rewire our brains after a certain age. Now we know that that's not exactly true anymore, that when you put some effort into it, there is some amount of neuroplasticity that we can still achieve. Do you find that in your clientele as well and in your own life?
Yes, absolutely. It's habits, isn't it? It's changing things that we've been doing for a long period of time and changing them for something predominantly more healthy. And don't get me wrong, I think habit change can be very difficult because we do things, we're doing them for years. But I have very successful results with clients with getting, changing the ways that they do things or adding in things that become a habit. But it's the way that you do it, isn't it? It's doing it gradually in a manageable, realistic way. You can't overhaul somebody's life. You just have to add in small things. I do, for example, on one of my group programs, to get more motion, to get more movement into people's lives. I do it myself. I have a pair of dumbbells by the kettle in the kitchen because I'm British, so I drink lots of tea. So I'm always putting the kettle on, and the dumbbells are by the kettle. So every time I put the kettle on, while it's boiling, I use my dumbbells. And I mean, if you're doing that 2-3 times a day, it adds up, doesn't it? And these small little things that you can slot into people's lives. And when you've done it a few times, well, they say, don't they, it takes 21 days, it's individual, to create a new habit.
Right.
It's easy and you enjoy doing it. It's like brushing your teeth. That's a habit we don't think about. We don't think about doing that, do we? We automatically do that because that's what we've been doing as children. But it is fascinating habit change. And what I also try to do, which research has shown, is that like tagging a new habit onto one that you already do, like brushing your teeth is a good example. If you want to, I don't know, say if we go back to skincare, if you want to start using skincare products or a good moisturizer in the evening or a serum, tag it on to do that in combination with brushing your teeth. So it kind of becomes one habit. And that's actually been shown to work if you tag new habits onto ones that are already existing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It actually makes me want to put a pair of dumbbells in the kitchen.
It's good. I love my dumbbells.
My wife and I could start that. That's actually something I'll try, I think.
Yeah.
So in terms of people starting to work with you, I know you mentioned that you have a free ebook. Can you tell us about that resource and how people can obtain it?
Yeah, I have a 7-day reboot and reset meal plan, which has got 7 days worth of breakfast, lunch and dinners. It's specifically for women in perimenopause and menopause. It's like a menopause reset. The idea that what I've been talking about, how you should eat, what you should eat. And that is free to download. I can give you the link so you could maybe put that in the show notes.
Yes, we'll leave that in the link in the show notes below, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that it's a very good resource and a very informative and delicious, easy. I'm very, very into easy recipes. They're realistic. I realise people haven't got hours to spend in the kitchen. And then, if anyone else wants to learn more about me, I think my website is a good resource. It's alisonbladh.com. Mm-hmm. I'm virtually on all social media. So if you just look for Alison Bladh, you'll find me, on that. Yes, and I do also have my group program, which due to popular demand, I've got another one starting on the 4th of November, which is a 21-day reboot and reset for women over 40. And if you're interested in that, if you go to my website, there's a waiting list on the home page there, so you can just sign up for it there.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're going to leave all these links in the show notes, including the free ebook with the delicious, straightforward 1-week meal plan, as well as Alison's website with the over 40 reset group as well. So there are many ways that you help your clients be a more beautiful, more fulfilled version of themselves through perimenopause and menopause in an aspect of your life that's not related to work. Where do you find beauty in your life?
Where do I find beauty? I'm very adventurous, and I really believe in pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So I find that doing things in nature, being outside, experiencing the beauty of the world that we live in, makes me feel beautiful, because I feel so privileged to have seen, a lot of things that I have seen. But it is a beautiful world we live in. So, get out there in nature and experience it as much as you can, because it just makes you feel great.
Yeah. There's something timeless about being outdoors. And I mean, we're living in 2024, but going outdoors, taking in nature, you could do that no matter what year it is, no matter what era it is. And I think it's really one of those things that helps re-energize and just help you get recentered. So I love that. I asked about a couple of fun facts about you, and one of them is that you're a beekeeper. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, my lovely bees in the garden. I've been a beekeeper now for over 10 years. I've always been fascinated in bees and honey and raw honey, straight from the hive. So I decided to do a course in being a beekeeper. And then at the end of the course, it was, well, I've done this now. Let's get some beehives. So we have between 2 to 3. Some years we've had 4, because in the summer, especially in Sweden, it's the weather is normally good in the summer, but it's a long winter, so the societies tend to die off, or you get new ones in the summer. So yeah, it's a lovely hobby, and the honey is delicious. I mean, it's you harvest the honey. It's around this time of year in Sweden. And I think one year the most we've had was over 100 kilos of honey. Wow. That was from four hives. But it's just that bees are fascinating. The way that they run their societies, and you obviously have to look after them, and you take up the frames and you look at them and you try and find the queen. And I mean, respect to bees, that they're fantastic and fascinating creatures. And obviously we need them to pollinate everything. They're crucial for everything that we eat, really, plant-based, aren't they?
All right. That's so fascinating. I do not know too many beekeepers in my life, and now I've met another one. Well, I really appreciate your insight and enthusiasm for what you do in helping perimenopausal and menopausal women achieve a more beautiful version of themselves, lead more fulfilling lives, and take a break sometimes from running on empty for others and instead pouring into themselves for self-care and for a more fulfilling, balanced lifestyle.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you today. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So thank you for joining me on this episode of the You Are Beautiful podcast with J. Kim, MD. All of Alison's resources, including her free ebook, will be included in the description below. For exciting content, and if you want to leave feedback about other guests or content you'd like to see on the show, send an email to podcast.youarebeautiful@gmail.com. Again, very many thanks to Alison Bladh for joining me on this podcast. And until the next time, remember these 3 core tenets. Number 1, you are beautiful. Number 2, you are unique. And number 3, you are worth it. Take care, everyone.